It really was something seeing fandom celebrate, not just in response to Boom, but in the weeks leading up to it. Honestly, the weirdest part of some of the recent discourse online was the sinking realization that Stephen Moffat might be the least hated showrunner right now. There was a time when all of this would have been unthinkable. I speak, of course, about a very specific run of his that we all seem to have collectively dubbed the bad one. Not just of his era, but maybe the whole of New Who. The kindest reaction I've seen is a shrug, even from Moffat fans. I think Series 7A is alright. Asylum of the Daleks is a 7 out of 10. No, we're not litigating the Amy and Rory subplot. I don't have the meds for it right now. Power of 3, not even the ending can fuck that up for me. Angels Take Manhattan rules, and I'm ambivalent about the other two. From what I can tell, most of the derision comes towards the second half of the series, so that's where I'm going to direct most of my attention. Let's start with Clara, as she's pretty much the only big complaint I'm going to actively push back on. Is Clara a character in Series 7B? Yes, actually. Bells of St. John is probably my favourite episode because I think it's the one that gets her the most right. I really like the setup. A woman who's put her own plans on hold because the mother in a family she was close to died.
I was going to travel. I came to stay for a week before I left, and during that week...
She died. So you're returning a favour, then?
And I dig how the episode explicitly draws a comparison between her willingness to stay behind for the people in her life and Eleven's tendency to not do that.
But you don't run out on the people you care about. Wish I was more like that.
Me too!
Clara shares the Doctor's desire for adventure, but she's capable of being there for the people in her life. Whereas 11 has always had people waiting for him. And of course, we know where this was heading to. The Doctor will eventually spend hundreds of years on one planet looking after one town, stuck on the slow path that Amy, Rory and River had to tread. So Clara's original conception was to be a good example for him, and he's eventually going to reach her standard, which is something that carries through to the very end of her time with 12. But if you want to argue that she's a completely different character here compared to Series 8 and 9, you have some ground for it, but not because she became a teacher. I actually do buy that would happen based off her interactions with Angie and Artie.
Come on, Artie. Time to go.
What chapter are you on?
10.
11 is the best. You'll cry your eyes out.
In Series 7, she's selfless. In Series 8, she's screwing up things with Danny. But of course, there's one big difference between where she starts and where she ends up. She gained access to all of time and space. Which, it's it's a really, really easy way to avoid all your responsibilities. I wonder who else has worked that out. So we've established a motive, a function within this series, and a character through line from just that one scene. More than a solid setup, so why do some people call her generic? Let's put the Impossible Girl arc to one side, because one of the factors at play here is the production of Series 7. Other people have made these observations for me. It's likely Moffat had a decent idea of what this character was going to be, but there might not have been a chance for all the other writers to catch up on this in time. So the first episodes to be shot, Cold War and Hyde, it does make sense that there's less of a character to her than Akaten and Bells, which were shot towards the end. I was alarmed to learn that Cold War and Hyde were shot before the Snowmen. You know, the one with Victoria and Clara. Imagine going from having to play the modern day iteration that people are still kind of trying to work out, to the governess barmaid version, and then back to the modern day one. To top it off, Moffat was still writing the Snowmen whilst Hyde was filming, and the decision to even have the Clara the Doctor travels with be from modern day Earth instead of the Victorian era version came late, apparently. So Clara slipping into standard companion mode for a couple of stories in the middle of this run might just have been the case so Jenna Coleman didn't have to play a completely different character every week. It's not that Moffat didn't bother to come up with a character, it's just that some of these episodes were filmed before he had the chance to refine some of these ideas and to give everyone else the broad strokes of Clara. Now we'll consider the arc itself. It's very 11 to keep getting weird when the people in his life keep secrets from him, despite his own secret keeping. It's in character for him to treat his companions as puzzles to be solved. So bringing that to the forefront and calling him out on it is a solid idea for an arc. The problem is, the only episode that turns this into an actual dramatic beat is Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS, an episode I enjoy that's tragically cursed by the worst subplots ever in the history of anything. For one brief scene, the actual point of the Impossible Girl arc rears its head.
She was you!
You're scaring me.
What are you, eh? A trick? A trap?
I don't know what you're talking about!
You really don't, do you?
I think I'm more scared of you right now than anything else on that TARDIS.
Then there's a time reset, and the following episodes, again because of the production, can't pick up where this episode left off thematically. You may have noticed that everything I've just said has been about how this arc affects the Doctor. How does Clara respond to being treated like a puzzle box? Well, the show actually does give an answer to that. Rings of Akaten is an episode I'm mixed on. I like the first third of it. I think Clara talking to this kid is excellent. You could tell me this is the Doctor and I would believe you. The other bit I like is the ending.
You were there. At Mum's grave, you were watching. What were you doing there?
I don't know, I was just making sure.
Of what?
You remind me of someone.
Who?
Someone who died.
Well, whoever she was, I'm not her, okay? If you want me to travel with you, that's fine. But as me, I'm not bargain basement standing for somebody else. I'm not going to compete with a ghost.
Shut up, you're not my mum.
And I'm not trying to be, okay?
So, it's not that Series 7 doesn't make its stance on treating people like puzzle boxes. Akaten gives us what basically should be the conclusion to this arc. Clara discovers that 11 is trying to work her out, and he's crossing boundaries in the process of doing it, and she insists that he stops. Cool. Great. Can we skip the subsequent scenes of 11 brooding over the mystery then? No? Okay, that's cool. My friends, Sam and Josh, recently made a video about how they go about rehauling the 13th Doctor era. They shuffle the order of episodes, they take out some episodes and replace them with bits of the expanded media. I think if I was trying to rehaul Series 7, well, for one thing, I'd put the 11 DCs in there somewhere, but I'd also keep Journey and Akaten from this second half of the series, put them towards the front, put Akaten after Journey, and then nip the Impossible Girl arc pretty much in the bud so we can spend more time with Clara as an actual character. Her diffusing the situation pretty swiftly would, it would do credit to her as a character, it would separate her from the companions that have come before, and it would provide a nice contrast for when she can't do that as easily with 12. That also feels truer to Moffat's original intent with the characters.
With Jenna and Matt's Doctor, Jenna was so forceful, and so much, and so much the organizer, and so much the person pushing back against the Doctor. So the control freak gag that we have. But if you've seen the first few episodes, which I've watched quite recently, she's so in command of the Doctor, and Matt just being the Matt Doctor, being sweet and adorable, and he just rolls on his back and says, "Oh, tickle my tummy, then that's great."
Some people don't care for 11 in this series. Anyone who takes issue with this particular incarnation will point to Series 7B. The 11th Doctor is one of my favourite characters ever. I think Matt Smith is one of the greats, but I get where they're coming from. A lot of the most notorious moments have already been discussed to death. Matt Smith suggested the kiss in Crimson Horror, Gaiman wrote the short skirt line. Maybe everyone just heard Moffat say, "slut it up," and went about it in completely the wrong way, but I've got nothing else to add beyond, less moments like this would have been very, very much appreciated. So, let's talk about a broader issue. I think Matt Smith's still playing the character as if he had a large TARDIS team. Which makes sense. Series 7 aired in 2 halves, but it was all filmed at once. So, for one moment, he had Amy, Rory, and sometimes River. The next, just Clara. Maybe with some more time, he could have adjusted his performance, dial things back closer to how he approached the character in Series 5. One of the first things I noticed in Day of the Doctor was that he started working a lot better for me. Not because of anything he's doing, but just because a larger cast acts almost as a sort of buffer to that manicness and hand flappery. God bless Amy and Rory, I think they were the ones holding back the twee in this era. Whenever we get an episode without them, it gets very saccharine, very whimsical, very quickly. In the 11th Doctor Chronicles on Big Finish, the Doctor is in some ways even more silly without Moffat and Smith's influence, but the inclusion of Valerie Lockwood, who's a very different kind of character, balances things out. And that's the kind of companion you should be putting 11 with, whereas a pretty selfless Doctor surrogate just isn't really a balancing act. Moffat said he basically wrote Clara like the Doctor as a young woman living in modern-day England, and when I told someone that, they suggested that the problem might be that they have too similar chemistry.
They're nothing but a couple of reactionary stereotypes confirming the myth that everyone in Britain is a lovable, middle-class eccentric!
Which explains why putting Coleman with Capaldi worked much better. This provides an interesting comparison to 15 and Ruby right now. People were complaining in the Space Babies and the Devil's Cord they were just too similar to each other. They got on too well. It can create quite a static dynamic. So, Series 7B. Is it as bad as people claim? Sorry, that wasn't really a very helpful conclusion. I mean, it's not like its problems don't exist. Probably the weakest Moffat run, but its frenetic energy means it's over before I know it, as opposed to outright defeating me like some of the Chibnall seasons. It's a similar deal to this current era, but the individual episodes stand out way more than this run. Hyde is astonishingly nothing. Crimson Horror is the Voyage of the Damned of the Moffat era. I'll let you infer whether I'm speaking positively there. Nightmare in Silver isn't even the worst Cybermen story. And Name of the Doctor is fine. Just fine. A great first act and third act pressed up against each other. There's nothing else really to be done with the Impossible Girl arc other than just to bring it to a close. Clara is heading for her doom at the same time that 11 is. I think how she faces down her predetermined end in comparison to how he does it is the beat I would focus on, but hey, I'm no Sarah Dollard. Bells of St. John is the best for my money. I'd call that underrated if anything. All in all, if you want a series that explores voyeurism well, especially in a meta sense... Statement ends.